Hello, everyone, and welcome to Insight Check, where we delve into the dungeon of your bad decisions to retrieve the treasure of wisdom. My name is Air. I use he, him.
I'm Matt. I use he, him.
And I'm Haley. I use she, her. And I am happy to introduce this week's specialist guest. Nurse, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm NurseNormal, she, her. Happy to be back with a voice.
With a voice.
And like that, and that's like not like, oh, stand up for, black people, indigenous people, and people of color. No, I'm like literally like, I have like vocal cords that are working properly
Fully
when air goes through them.
That's right, because the last time you were here, you were a little froggy.
No, the last time I was here, I was like wheezing through it. And I sounded like, I sounded like a character from The Wizard of Oz or something.
Listen, you had some salient points about the Lollipop Guild, and we thank you for them.
And true fans will remember.
And true fans will remember.
Truest fans.
Yeah, represent. So, yeah.
So this week we wanted to talk a bit about inclusivity in our communities, gaming communities. I should have written this out so I could use my words like a human.
This is like, that's like a real, like an actual response. No, that's like an actual response because, oh no, like it's so woke. Like, you're like, oh, how do I even begin to describe?
Yeah. How do I even begin to describe what this world is right now without doing the very generic, ambiguous, like with everything that's going on today?
Yeah, no, it's so great being a subscriber to a lot of different podcasts, and then now like that I'm catching up, everyone has just like, oh, by the way, this is our statement. And and I would have hated for you guys to like not have like a not have something that is like a real thing to say. Like, cause some people were like, we're just going to take the week off from doing the show so y'all can focus on, the events. But we're not going to talk about the event.
Yeah. My favorite, I think my favorite are the people who are just really vague. Like they don't mention, I don't actually like them, but it's like the happenings that are occurring someplace, sometime, somewhere.
That you might have strong feelings about. You can decide which side of that strong feelings you have.
Isn't it great when you can notice those things?
Yeah.
Because I do it all the time. Like, oh, they're not actually saying, oh, but yeah.
The current events are extant, period. Like, yeah.
Thanks.
So, yeah, just so we can set the record straight for all of us, I feel here at Insight Check, Black Lives Matter, trans rights, everything that you're seeing going on in the world right now needs to end in real change. These efforts can't be for naught because they've been treated with Band-Aid solutions that haven't worked, and it needs to stop. And we support any and all efforts to do that. And that is where we're at. So I hope you are all there too.
Then you can get off the bus now and go think about your life.
You can get off the bus.
Haley put you all in the corner.
Yeah, go think about why you feel that way and learn something new. Hopefully by listening to this podcast, but also like read a book or do. Speaking of books, I'm going to do, this is not really a dungeon crawl, but I guess it's sort of my dungeon crawl for this week.
Go for it.
I am reading currently The People's History of the United States by Howard Zinn. It's been on my to-read list for like years now. Howard Zinn was a BU professor, so I kind of was always when I was there, but I was sort of always aware of him and this book, and then I knew I should read it because I had a woefully mediocre at best U.S. history education. I never learned anything post the New Deal.
Oh my gosh.
And even that was in my AP US history class. And then I had to try to write an essay on Vietnam. It went really well. But this book is fantastic because what Zinn tries to do is write history from the non-traditional colonizer winner's view. So I just finished basically the history of Columbus as told by the peoples of the Bahamas. And I'm now reading about like Massachusetts and Virginia colonies, but from the point of view of Native American tribes. And if you either haven't thought about the history of your country at all since you left school, or you want to broaden your horizons and understand more where people are coming from, it's very approachably written. It doesn't read like a textbook. It reads like a story, and I would recommend it.
Isn't it funny how you're like, oh yeah, it turns out that Pearson and a bunch of other big book publishers have pretty much decided what you're going to learn and what the curriculum is going to be. And it's not even like the difference between like the Pearson like at school book and the Pearson homeschooling book.
Oh, no, nurse. No, you're going to get me off on a rant. I work in education. I hate Pearson with the burning passion of 1,000 fires.
Oh, yeah, no, trust me, me too. My board's exams were proctored by like Pearson people.
Oh, of course, yeah.
So, yeah.
Awesome.
Proctored by Pearson with standardized tests by Pearson.
Yeah. Oh, gosh.
The two things that I remember from my like social studies is the song about all the provinces in Canada, which I think I sung on a previous podcast and I will not sing now, and also a song about how Christopher Columbus found America.
Yeah, no, I suspect it must have been so different.
I think one of those things is relevant.
No, I was just thinking, I suspect it must have been so different growing up on the East Coast versus the West Coast.
Oh, yeah.
Because I was like, yeah, no, I don't live close enough to Canada to know that song or to have been taught that song. But no, it's amazing.
Bunch of Yankees
it's amazing still. No, it's amazing still.
Hi, I'm right here.
Air, do you know a song to teach you all of the names of your province?
I do not. I was unaware of this song up until your dulcet tones introduced it to mine ears. But we do not have a song for all y'all states. I'm sorry.
There's a lot.
I was just putting together a puzzle with my daughter, and the puzzle decided that Alaska was nothing but ice flows. So, we're not perfect up here either.
But recent breaking news from Boston is that people beheaded the Christopher Columbus statue in the North End.
Wow.
I applaud you, whoever did that.
And another was returned to the sea.
And apparently that is not the first time that Columbus statue has lost its head.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. But people here, there's a feast and parades to Christopher Columbus in Boston. A place that he never visited. So, yeah, it's very strange. And you think, as a person who grew up in New England, you feel very, I would say, there's this arrogance to, there's not racist people here like there are in the South. And we are much more whatever people want to believe about themselves here. And then you realize that none of it's true.
Yeah, you see it everywhere. And for some people, they don't have to look too hard at all. I thought you were going to say, no, growing up in England, we have an idea of Thanksgiving. And I was thinking, the rest of America took exactly that idea. And we all try to have the New England Thanksgiving. That's an actual thing. That's an actual thing.
Yeah, it's so bizarre. Why do we do these things? I don't understand. Let's have a holiday where we celebrate how nice and helpful the native people were to us in making sure we didn't starve. And then we killed them all. But we won't talk about that. I'm really angry. I'm going to stop.
Just to say something really quick about the statues and stuff like that, it's people are taking that anger and harnessing that anger, and they're doing all sorts of things, and we have to accept that. I'm totally cool with it, because life is life, I think, arguably is just as important as property. I think being alive is something that you can leverage. Because there's a lot of people who are not alive right now for no other reason really than because of what they look like. And that's not cool. And it's okay to get rid of some statues. It's totally fine. Look at what they did in, the Middle East, in Germany, in other places where they've gone through this sort of thing. Like, they don't have what we have, which I thought was fascinating.
I do think that's really interesting. It's like people want to say all they want that we need statues of General Ely or whatever because it's our heritage history. But, like, I don't go to Germany and see statues of Hitler.
They're all, and like, I think I read somewhere that like they're all like in a field somewhere. You can go see them, but they're like all like in a field. Like some place. Yeah, that's where they put them. But no, just to like dial it back in. I'm a person of color. I don't mind saying that. Like, and how do I say this? It's like there's a certain amount of having like a public facing life, like an internet facing, public facing life, and having like a private life. And like I have, it's like I got a little bit of melanin, whatever. But I just want to say outright, like, colorism is a thing too. And I know for certain that as many unfair things that I've had to go through, it is a modicum of what a person who has darker skin than I do has had to go through. We can empathize and commiserate, but we can't say I've had that same experience because, like, they haven't. Like, the implicit bias here is thinking and growing up and thinking that what you've experienced is the universal norm of what everyone else is experiencing. And if you don't feel as if you've had an advantage or you don't feel like you've had any privilege, your assumption is that nobody else has had any of that or nobody else has had any kind of disadvantage.
And also, just because you maybe have had a disadvantage doesn't mean you've had that same lived experience.
Mm-hmm. And like growing up Asian, like, oh no, it's great because, like, first of all, like, I'm the second child and I'm also a woman, so I was already born a disappointment. Like, because you're Asian. No, that's a thing that Asian people will understand. But it's also like you grow up with that sort of like Asian guilt, that work ethic that you have to be a model citizen because you're a minority. And if you do something wrong, it's going to paint your entire people's like that, especially if you're the only like Asian person you come across, right? But I had like a fortunate upbringing where the color of my skin wasn't, and the implications around it wasn't something that I had to think about until like maybe high school. It's funny, like that Haley like mentioned like AP classes and stuff like that. It's like I took some honors classes. I never took AP classes because I was just like not about that. But like you definitely notice like you're like I'm just sad it took me until high school to notice this because there's a lot of really, really unfortunate kids who are learning this at 3 years old. Like, you can't help but notice that like the classes with the better textbooks, with the better teachers, they're all majority white kids. And the college prep classes are all majority people of color and black kids. And you notice the quality in those classes too. So like, because, I grew up with like an Asian guilt and this kind of work ethic, it's really cemented into you. You have to work harder. You have to figure it out. It's going to be an uphill battle, but you're going to figure it out. If you're going to do music, which is what I did, you're going to decide that you're going to be the best that you can. You're going to be first chair. You're going to be the section leader. You're going to have the best section in the whole band. And that's true because we got awards and stuff like that. Because no, there's like actual physical evidence. No, you're going to try to get into the best classes that you can. You're going to try to get the best grades that you possibly can get. You're not going to take like the middle of the road route. You're going to try to take as many different classes as you can and get a lot of experience and have like a wholesome, like a holistic kind of education. And for every class project, you're going to have damn near the best one. You're going to get the best grade and you're not going to go get a job during summer. You're going to go take college classes because that's just like what you want to do. And like, if you ever happen across anyone who knew me in high school, I'm sorry, but like, cause I wasn't really worth knowing, but they'll be able to tell you that I was like low key, like competitive, and I didn't appreciate that competitiveness really until I went to university. And like we'll get to PAX and everything and like the community stuff in a little bit because it's all gonna make sense, trust me. But like when I did school, I did both nursing and philosophy, you know. And what's funny about those two disciplines is that in nursing, because I was already a woman and because I was Filipino of all things, like I didn't really get any of the kind of like racism or hard times that you would get in other disciplines, especially like philosophy, which is notorious for being like the armchair white male discipline. Yes. Like of all, and not even just like of like university in general, but like of all of the kinds of humanities that you can possibly take, philosophy is always ranked the worst as far as like diversity.
It's so like contrary to everything that
isn't it amazing? And they're like, yeah, no, there's no problem. Like, no. And like the fact of the matter is like I suspect that like my male classmates in nursing probably had a little bit of a different experience, but I didn't have a hard time in nursing school, but I of course had a hard time in philosophy. And I probably had one of the best like philosophy departments that you could possibly have. Like it was like they were all like super safe space, like super woke, like they made it like effort to be as like inclusive as possible. And it was obvious to me like that they were trying their best. And yet stuff would happen like, oh, I'm just trying to make like this discussion or whatever. And you're like, oh, we're not talking about ethics. We're talking about metaphysics. You can shut up, you know, or like stuff like that. Like classmates or, you know, sometimes being encouraged by professors. Like it didn't matter if I had something to contribute or to think about or to work with. Like if someone decided that I wasn't worth listening to, they would just like not see me as a source of knowledge. They'd just cut me off and change the subject or whatever. And I noticed it was always when like I perceived that I was winning the argument. But it's just like a thing. It's a thing that just happens. Like you just get used to it. And now like, and in philosophy especially, the thing that you tend to notice is they won't take like you put your name on the last page, not the first page, so that your professors don't like get any kind of like ideas or any sense of like who you are and stuff like that. But even with like a bunch of like the safeguards and things like that, there are still gonna be students who are just damn tired of trying to be an example for the rest of their family, tired of trying to be an example for their peers, trying to be the quote unquote good one, someone who's above it, someone who defies the bias, defies the system, like the systemic racism, who, and this is the shame of it all, who has to earn merit in spite of their color. In spite of having a disadvantage. Oh, you did it in spite of that. That's messed up. Like, you know, it's the unnecessary uphill climb where like, and I had like little things that faculty would say to me, like, oh, just because you got a good grade on a paper doesn't mean it's any good. Comments from classmates. Oh, you'd have an easier time getting into a nursing grad school than you would doing the philosophy application. And I'm like, I'm not even like talking to you, bro. Like, or like, you're not doing real philosophy is the thing that I would get a lot. You're not doing real philosophy because I was more concerned about the justification of things or the implication that had on actual real people. Like the philosophy that a lot of people like to do when I was in school had nothing to do with like real people. and so when I would bring up okay, so take your theory now and let's call it the capital T truth. And now what does the world look like? Oh, we're not talking about that. And I'm like, okay, well, but if we're talking about the capital T truth, shouldn't we be concerned with that? If this is what you suspect is real.
No, facts just get in the way of truth.
Yeah, and everyone else is wrong. Like, you know, own up to it, right? Yeah, no, everyone hated that. But no, like, but after philosophy, like things like I emailed like a professor too, like the other day too, like, hey man, like shit's cray. But no, after philosophy and as soon as I started working, like things were getting better. And instead of it being nursing school versus like philosophy degree, it became, you know, just nursing. And for a while I was able to just focus that, but then it became being a nurse, doing like this career route, and then now being like a freelance artist on Twitter. and being part of the community. And now I had these two things that were fighting with each other. Okay. So it's like in nursing at the workplace, thank goodness. I work for the county. I work for like the lowest of the low, the underserved. Like we don't have any insurance. Like that's totally okay. Like, you know, you don't have to worry about it. So like it's a county hospital versus a private hospital. So even in like SoCal, it's like, who do you see more of in the county hospital? People of color, Black people, Indigenous people. Even when I was in school, we did mostly private hospitals. Who was I helping? Did I ever have to use Spanish at any of the private hospitals? Did I ever have to, you know, did I ever have to think about that? Did I ever have to worry about that sort of thing? And like, so I'm super happy that I work for the county and get to work for like underserved people, because like we're trying to be the best hospital we can be despite that. Like I think I was telling y'all earlier, like, you know, we're like all of our new coworkers, like we're just like taking them in, you know, and trying to be kind and trying to show them, hey, like this is the version of the world that we think it is, like in our bubble. And in reality, if you go into another hospital, it looks like completely different, you know. But the kind of BS and the kind of like microaggressions and the kind of stuff I have to think and deal with and the kind of discrimination that I get online on Twitter doing my hobby, it's insane. Like versus like the stuff that I never have to worry about that at work. Usually it's like, usually for people it's, you have to worry about it all the time. Thank goodness. I don't have to worry about that at work, because like all we have to worry about at work right now is the Rona, and that's like enough. You know?
All we have to worry about.
The only
Oh
small
my
thing
goodness.
is just the global pandemic. It's fine.
But it's like it's a little bit like of a cop out, of course, like with all of these like statements being said. But like no, like my hospital and like parts of the county have straight up been like, no, like yo, it's Juneteenth, like. Yo, Black Lives Matter. Like, we've just come out and said it, and, like, not a lot of hospitals can say that. Sure, there's still, like, the problem of, like, people of color and the kinds of care disparities that they get between their doctors and stuff like that, and, like, that's something that we're working on, but I suspect it's way less than what someone might have to deal with in, like, a private hospital or with doctors and nurses who work with primarily white people. Like, it's like you have to have cultural awareness when you're a nurse, and like, yeah, well, that's easy because like it's second nature to all of us, you know. But I suspect that's a different story elsewhere.
The one thing that I have really taken away from just like our chat today, so far, has really been like the extra level of just constant awareness and constant like energy that you have to put towards all of this. And I think that's the thing that as a white person, or as white people, we should be more aware of. Like, it's so easy. Sometimes you're like, oh, I'm so tired. I can't deal with XYZ today. And then think about like what dealing with XYZ today would look like if you were constantly trying to be like a model version of what everyone thinks that you should be.
Yeah, no, if you think that you can just turn this off and, I'm just not going to go on Twitter today, or I'm just not going to look, and I'm just not going to think about it, I'm just going to watch a movie or whatever, then you have the privilege to do so. Because there's a lot of people who can't just turn off, who can't just go to the grocery store, who can't sleep in their own bed, like, who can't walk around their neighborhood. Like, I'm glad that you're thinking about it, because I see it in, you know, D&D community too. I see it. Some people, it's real easy for them to just not talk about it. And I could call a bunch of people out if I wanted to, but I don't, who are just like, oh, I'm not going to say anything. I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to be...
I don't like to be political.
Or I'm going to be like, who is it? Switzerland? Like, completely neutral to the whole entire process. And so, like, some people, thankfully, have checked in on me. Like, they weren't checking in on me. Like, some people were checking in on me on Rona. Like, coronavirus. But, like, more people checked in on me with, like, oh, yeah, hey, like, that's a thing, right? And I'm like, oh, yeah, this is a thing. Like, and some people have not. And some people who I thought, like, were really good friends, like, haven't said anything or haven't taken a stand, and like you just have to accept that and move on. But yeah, it hasn't gone beyond my notice how people got real nice and quiet when stuff started going down. But as far as like community microaggressions, like the first time it happened, I think I drew Omen. The first time like I really remember it really happening is I noticed that whenever I would draw Omen, everybody would point out that he is not supposed to have hair and he doesn't have pointed ears. And the thing about me is because I have to try to be the best and be perfect at things. It's like I have receipts. like I know that Omen has hair because I can reference it in this podcast that came out, X number of years ago. I know that Omen has pointed ears because I can reference it in this podcast that came out X number of years ago. And like, I remember it had gotten so bad to a point where Chris Straub had noticed in my comments that like a bunch of people were pointing out like the hair and stuff like that. And Chris Straub took his own picture of Omen and said, see, look, hair, it's fine. Like, and then all of a sudden, finally, as someone who people see as a source of knowledge will believe. It's not enough to come from me. And then all of a sudden, Mike started drawing Omen with the pointed ears again because he's a half elf. And then he started drawing Omen with like the hair again. Chris started. Yeah,
it slipped back into, oh, this is just Jerry.
Isn't that funny? And you're going to hear me pick on Penny Arcade a lot because they're easy to pick on. And it's just what I love. And like, if you can't criticize the things that you like, then I feel bad for you. But no, like Brahma from the C Team, oh, I can't get enough of this.
She's not a buxom blonde? No way. I do not accept.
It's literally another blonde person.
Yep.
And I don't mean to sound hateful, but
fine. I'm a blonde person. But
here's the thing. No. But here's the thing. Like, every single character has been a blonde white person. I was like, where are we geographically here? Like, aren't we supposed to be like super close to like Waterdeep? Like, why are the suburbs looking like this right now? But no, like when I would draw Brahma, and I don't draw her anymore because I'm just tired of this. Like, why is she brown? Why'd you draw Brahma brown? Why does she have pink and blonde hair? Isn't she supposed to be blonde hair? I'm like, yeah, because she's been described as like a blonde bombshell. But here's the thing, like that I like point out. I'm like, Brahma is ostensibly an Indian name, and so what's wrong with an H? Brahma with an H, like it's an ostensibly Indian name, and so I wanted to draw inspiration from like South Asia and from like Sikhs and from people who have a little bit more melanin. And why is that so disappointing for so many people? Because and the thing that doesn't help is that like I want you to listen and see this too, because I know a lot of DMs probably don't think about this, but like if you didn't say anything at all about describing a character, would you know what they looked like? Like how much would you imagine that they look like? If Jerry doesn't say anything at all, people assume that she's a white blonde lady, right? Mm-hmm. And it's only
like, would you just assume that it looks closer to whatever you look like?
Yeah, and so like think about that. Try to notice that whenever you're listening to and watching these shows, because you're like, oh, that's just me putting that spin on it, right? That's not actually what anyone is saying, And so that like when I worked on the book, which was like fun, I would do a bunch of these characters and they would say, oh, they look like this, blah, blah, blah. And I'd do the sketch and it would come back out. Like, I think it was, I want to say it was not Profa, but it was like Pertentia or Auspicia, where I had drawn their hair long, and like I did the sketch and I drew it and everything. I sent it out and they're like, oh yeah, by the way, like Auspicia's hair is like short or whatever, or Pretentious hair is short. And I'm like, why didn't y'all say that? Like, and like the funny thing was I had the receipts. So I was able to reference in exactly the C-Team episode, like, no, this is when the hair was cut. And then like they came around with, oh, by the time this book comes out, the hair will be long again. I was like,
oh, bullshit.
Yeah, no, like by the time, like, cause the thing that I referenced was like a couple of weeks back, and they're like, oh yeah, no, if they played the game today, her hair would be long again. So I suspect that's Auspicia, right? I suspect that's who we were talking about. And I was like, well, okay, fine. Like, that's cool. I'll just work on this thing, you know, but yeah, it's like, if you don't say anything, like I can't read your mind. I try. Trust me, I try, but I can't. Like, Audra, Prophetess's wife,
yeah.
Like I mistook her for, like, it sounds like the mail carrier who is black. Aubrey.
Ava.
Aubrey. And so in, like, the first, or like the third episode, because I remember it was after they came out of the test market, like, he described a person, like, carrying the mail inside, and I just assumed that was Audra, and it turned out that was the mail carrier, Aubrey, the courier, who had dark skin. And so when I was like, okay, what does Audra actually look like? Oh, she's got, like, porcelain skin, and she has blonde hair. And I'm like, I'm just gonna keep her black, if that's okay. Like,
yes,
because she hasn't appeared at all in the show for more than a couple of seconds in a Christmas special. The idea was that, like, she was Vistani or something.
Yeah,
that was
like,
the idea.
I thought she had some manner of dark skin.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know where I pulled that from. It's probably your art.
Yeah, probably.
All be easier to just accept nurse art as canon for all characters, and be so much easier.
It's just easier.
Exactly. I think that's actually just to bring it back to just D&D for one moment. Like, that's a great call out to anyone who DMs. Like, make sure that you take the time to, like, describe your characters. And if you feel uncomfortable saying, like, this person walks into the bar and she's a black woman, and if that makes you uncomfortable, like, think about why it makes you uncomfortable to describe someone as black.
I don't even see pretend people's
I don't even see pretend people's skin color.
Race. Yeah. Could you imagine?
But no, like, when I was drawing a lot, you know, for D&D stuff, for the CC and stuff, and then, like, oh my gosh, like, I have, like, such a backlog of commissions right now. Like, why can't, and, like, I'll try to do a spin on it. So, like very recently I drew a really cute, like, kobold character who is, like, 5 years old, and they're, like, a bard, and they're, like, super into Vars Malus, and I'm like, okay, sweet. And then I was like, you know what, I don't actually know anything about kobolds, let me just look it up. And it turns out, like, a 6-year-old kobold is, like, a fully grown adult, and by 5 they're like a fully grown adult. And I was like, okay, they're not a child. And so I'm like, okay, what can I do to make this fun for me and also exciting for, like, the person that I'm giving to this to? I'm like, oh, okay, I'll make them a bard, but I'm gonna make them, like, a punk rock, you know, like, fuck the man, sort of. Vars Malus is, like, one of those, like, crazy, like, script, like, punk rock bands on a leather jacket with, like, spikes and stuff like that. And, like, there's your bard. Because why can't we have the things that we have here in D&D? Like, why can't we have, like, that little twist on it? Like, what is a lute? Really? Motherfucker's gonna have a lute?
Just gotta be
counterculture.
Yeah, why can't we have, like, counterculture bard? You know, like, why can't we have, like, a punk rock bard who's, like,
counterculture kobold? Sounds like a great band name,
right? Just, like, something, you know, like, if I have to, when I do these commissions, like, as long as it takes me, I'm very sorry to anybody who's like, why is she doing the podcast and not doing because, like, I'm also dealing with the Rona and also being, like, kicked out because of the Rona. So, like, I'll get to your commission, just, like, give me, like, a minute. But no, thankfully everybody's, like, been super kind. If I'm gonna do, like, a bunch of these commissions, like, I'm gonna try to make it as much as will allow. I'm gonna try to make it fun and interesting and bring something new to the table. So, like, when I ask people for descriptions and stuff, I say, okay, I need their skin color, their hair color, their eye color, what their class is, and one line of dialogue that will perfectly encapsulate what their personality is. And from that's all I really need, because I'd rather, and, like, if you have a reference image, that's great too. But like if I can sit down for, like, a couple hours and just imagine them for a little bit without anybody telling me anything else, like, I gotta get a lot of, like, light-skinned characters, and that's totally fine, but I'm gonna put a twist on it and hope that that's okay. I always, like, send them out and I'm like, is this okay? Like, I hope this is okay. I know that you said they're like a bard and everything, but I just went, like, super punk rock.
What did they think?
Oh, they loved it. They were awesome. They were like, this makes so much more sense. And I'm like, oh, awesome. I'm glad like something makes sense right now. I'm glad that if anything makes sense right now, you know, like I think for Anthony, who was the PAX East Omegathon co-champion, like when I made his characters for his family, like they were his family members, like who were in his, like in the party. And so I was like, this is like special and important, and I'm going to make it like a what is it? A parody of like the Gorillas, like Danger Days.
Demon Days.
Demon Days.
Yes.
Danger Days, I think, is like a killer's one. Or maybe it's an MCR one. I don't know. But no, I was like, okay, I'm going to do a parody of Demon Days, and I'm going to make it really like...
Demon Days is Gorillas. Day and Age is the Killers. I'm sorry.
Okay, no worries. No worries. But no, like, you know, I just want to make it as fun as I can. And speaking of like Anthony, I remember a long time ago, and I'm pretty sure he wouldn't mind me saying this, but I remember like a while back, he was telling me, like when we first met at like one of like, I think it was like PAX Prime or something. And he was just telling me about like, oh, Adrian's so nice. And like, y'all have let me into this community and like feel like I'm part of the community. And I'm like, oh man, that's great, you know? And like his sister was there, and he was, and like Anthony was telling me like, oh yeah, no, I just want to let you know like how important it is to my sister that someone who has the same skin tone is like a person being called out at PAX, like, oh yo, you're a nurse? I'm like, yeah, man, like, that's me, you know, and like how important that is. And it got me thinking like, oh yeah, because that's the thing I have to think about. Because that's the thing that he has to think about, that his sister has to think about. Because it's like, because I'm a minority, and everything that I do, any good thing that I do and any bad thing that I might do gets reflected back on the rest of us, you know? And it's like, I remember I was thinking real hard about it at PAX Prime. It's like, oh yeah, I can't just be like the model citizen version of me that I like. I have to be the model version, like the model citizen version that is going to be universal. Because now I'm an example to all of the Filipino people who were told that they can only be a nurse. Like, you know what? Like, I'm an example to like all of the Asian people who were told like, this is just a hobby. It's never going to be anything more than a hobby. And you have to like really like get like, you have to be an engineer. Like, you know? I'm like, oh yeah, like that's super important. And I can recall one more time where when we were at PAX South, which if you've never been to PAX South is like, it's probably my favorite one. I don't mind saying like it's easily the best one, right? Like you got
so
Prime.
Sad I wasn't there this year with you all.
Oh my gosh, lady, it was so great. Like you've got PAX, you know, Unplugged, which probably has like the best food or whatever, right? It's got a really good commute. The transportation's really good too. And then you got Boston, which probably has like the best overall convention center. And then you have Prime, which has the nicest theater for all of like the acting. Yeah, and the nostalgia and everything like that. But then you got South, which has easily like the best location, the best like views, the best community, you know, involvement. Like I was like, dang, there's more than just white people around here. Like,
which is surprising that that's the one that's in Texas. But anyway,
But no, San Antonio is real nice and like it's legit. And when I remember I was I didn't get to do the signing at San Antonio, but like I went and, you know, I got in line to get like stuff signed and everything like that. And I remember as I was leaving after I got everything signed and stuff and I was leaving, I was walking along like the barricade where everyone is staying in line, and like a couple people pointed me out and they were like, hey, can you sign my book? And I was like, oh yeah, sure. And so I just like on the side of their like I felt kind of bad because I was like co-opting like their autograph session or whatever. And so I was just like going down signing books. And I remember this lady, goodness, like I wish I could have like gotten her details or like took her name down. But there's this lady this black lady was visiting PAX South with her friend. And she's like a real big critter. Like she's a real big Critical Role fan. And she came up to me because her friend wanted to get a book signed, I think. Something like that. It's like a very like fleeting memory. And she came up to me and she, like the first words out of her mouth were, thank God for POC fan artists in the D&D community. Thank God for you. I hadn't thought about it again since like PAX Prime, like the previous year. And I was like, oh, geez. And like I looked at her and I said, you know what? I think you might be right about something. And she was like, you got to get into that Critical Role fan art. And I was like, oh, I'm scared of that community. And she was like, oh, you're scared? And I was like, yeah, it just feels like a little bit of cutthroat. And like, there's like a lot of really, really good artists in there. And I'm like, I'm really easy just like being like here in Penny Arcade. And she's like, damn, she thinks it's cutthroat. And I was like, yeah, I'm scared. But no. And then it got me thinking and looking around and been like, oh, there's like a lot more people of color here at PAX South. Oh, our meetups, when we have those meetups after the show in the hotel bar or at like the Mexican restaurant or whatever, like there's way more people of color. And you just like start to notice it again. And it got me thinking, I was talking to Adrian, like we were thinking about our very first Unplugged and like the cool like DNC meetup that we had. And we were looking at the photograph because it's like one of like our best memories. We were looking at the photograph and we're like, oh, Jerry and so, and like, oh, Chris is in there somewhere. And like, there's everybody. It's like, oh, there's, you know, there's Jay and there's everybody there. And me and Adrian were like, wow, you can count the people of color with one hand. Like, you know, you look at it and you're like, yeah, we're the token people. Like, you know, and like I said, Penny Arcade's real easy to pick on, but like you can't just say, oh, we're gonna do better. Oh, we're giving a bunch of money away. And that's great. Like, don't get me wrong, that's like super great and stuff. But like, that's not gonna be enough these days. And we can't tokenize people anymore. And we have to really look at ourselves really hard in the mirror and ask, what kind of community do we want? Like, cause it's a lot of pressure. Like, it's exhausting trying to be like a successful person and trying to be like a good person because like really I'm an asshole. And like when I have to go to these events, I'm like, I gotta put on my good person face. No, it's just like, yeah, no, cause you know, it's like I can sit here and be like, you know, we have to be honest. Like I can sit here and say that, but like action is better. Like I can sit here and say, listen, yeah, it's all great. But it's still an uphill battle because no matter how hard you work to earn your special seat at the live show, at your special seat at the table with all these people that you like, some people are just going to walk right in. Like it doesn't matter. And that's hard. Like it's always going to be this uphill battle. And despite making it to the table for a minute and getting to work on this book and getting to be part of this thing, you're always going to be, it doesn't matter if you have like a bunch of people of color at the table, you know, oh, we're looking into the community, we're hiring more people or whatever. It doesn't matter if those people are still afraid for their livelihood. Right. to speak about it, you know?
Yeah, you have to both have them be able to be there and be present, but also feel safe to speak up. And also you need to have people who will speak up when that person maybe can't speak up. Right.
Who's going to be more than just an ally, but like an accomplice, a co-conspirator. Like, like truly, because that's what it's going to take. And I think this is a good time to talk about like the diversity in Dungeons and Dragons statement.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And I remember like, cause this came out like the other day, right? A couple days ago.
It was on the 17th.
Yeah. Okay. So I had like a little bit of time to think about it. And I remember like I read it and Adrian was like, when are they going to talk about Oriental Adventures? We
were just having this conversation too, because people were like, Icewind Dale, we're still staying on the Sword Coast.
No, Oriental Adventures was the title of of one of their campaign settings.
Oh, is that the really gross?
Yeah.
The really...
It's exactly what it
is.
The tin.
It's exactly what it sounds like.
Okay, yeah, the one that I like.
Exactly what it sounds like, and it's kind of like I remember listening back to the podcast that I did before, and I was like, "Oh yeah, no, Chult is great. Like Chult is super diverse," and I'm like, I cringe when I think about it because it was at a time where I was like, grasping at straws. Like, no, this is not problematic. No, Chult is like super problematic. Tomb of Annihilation is super problematic because despite it being diverse and with a bunch of dinosaurs, they're still like a minority. Like, they're still treated as if they're a minority. Like, their character is still like, the same can be said for Oriental Adventure.
And it's like, let's have these probably white adventurers come in and fix things for you. Because you can't do it yourself. That's what we talked about the other day in chat.
Oh my gosh.
The exoticism of far off lands kind of thing. Just it always ties back to that Quest to the Orient weird European thing that is so fucked up.
Oh yeah, no, I remember Adrian went into the I think it was like the Shadow Council Discord the other day, and I was like, man, why the heck would you do this? And he was like, I just wanted to see. And so he was like, when you think about a paladin, what do you think? And they're like, oh, I think about like a knight, like a Templar, sort of blah, blah, blah. And he's like, okay, when you think about a monk, what do you think? And everyone was like, oh, shit. You know, right. Because they co-opt things like key points. They co-opt things like martial arts and like, and I was like, oh, because until he brought it up, like I really didn't think about it. I was just like, yeah, man, we got a stake in the game. We got monks, like, you know, because like, and that's like, it's hard because you're like, okay, do I pat them on the back for doing like literally like the least amount, right? Do I say, you know, I'm just happy that they're making an Asian movie at all. I'm just happy that they're making an Asian book at all. I'm just happy that there's an Asian character at all. Like, that's not gonna, like, shouldn't be good enough. It shouldn't have been good enough, like back then. And it's definitely, for me, it's definitely not good enough anymore. But no, to go back to the diversity and Dungeons and Dragons thing, I was like, man, they managed to do 3D, triple D.
Yeah,
triple D and D.
Dives.
No, like, they talk about orcs and drow, right? Like, okay, well, how about this? How did you guys feel about this statement? Or this, like, little news blurb thing?
So the drow thing I've known for a while. Yeah. And the orc thing is much more new, like, to me. In, like, the past, like, year or so, I've seen some good threads and articles about it. And I was like, yeah, now that I see it, yeah. Yeah. But the idea that they're fixing it by putting it in places that aren't the Forgotten Realm, like for the orc thing specifically, where it's like, oh, but see, we did them less dirty in the Eberron and Wild Mountain books.
see everyone.
We didn't do fuck all in our flagship main universe where we set every book on this one fucking coastline.
Do you think that they would eventually, because what that statement made it sound like that eventually new prints of those sorts of things would include changes, sensitivity changes, basically.
Thinking and hoping and wondering what the timetable of that is, right?
Yeah. Sure. I think that was part of my feeling, was like, okay, I'm glad you've made this statement. I'm glad you're addressing things that people have said were problematic for a long time. I think that on one of the earliest episodes of Insight Check, we talk about how race and stats should be divided, like taken apart, which they seem to be doing. But it's also like, why did you have to spend half of what you wrote talking about things you've already done? Did you need to pat yourself on the back, point it out? You could just say, here's things that we know we need to improve and we'll be continuing to tell you more ways that we're improving.
It's just, I'm just like reading this sentence over and over again. In those books, orcs and drow are just as morally and culturally complex as other people's. And I'm like, wow.
The fact that they're
just like real people.
Just like real
Who would have
people.
thought? No, and like it's funny, and like and I don't think Chris is gonna mind if I say this, but like when he, because like, you know, Cthulhu's Drab is blue, and like Cthulhu's Drab is using magic to justify his beard, and you know, and there's a really great race relation kind of like hook with Cthulhu's backstory, and it didn't matter because Watsi was still like, oh, can you make it purple or like a dusky?
Yeah.
I was like, really? And I remember Chris and I were talking at like his booth or whatever, and he was like, no, screw you. I'm not gonna change him. He's been like that since 2012. Like, you know, and like it's true. Like that character has been in like the background of all of the intros. And I'm like, yeah, no, it hasn't been a problem then. It shouldn't be a problem now. And the fact of the matter is, it's his story. It's his character, and isn't that a little bit more important? Like the stuff about Dinar's hands and his tail. Like, oh, can you take the tail out? Oh, can you take the tail out? Can you just take it out? Because Dragonborn don't have them. And I'm like, but this is his story. This is his character. Is that a real note you got? Yes. It was, I'm just trying to think about how to word this. So I got a mail saying, add a finger and do a little bit more of these things. And I was like, okay, I just wanna check in with, with Rydog. Like, can I just check in with him and see, like, just to make sure he's cool with it? I was like, because if he's okay with it, I'm gonna be okay with it. Because I knew what those things meant.
Well, my question on just that one specifically, was that note coming from somebody who didn't know C-Team shenanigans?
No, this person knew very well C-Team shenanigans. And,
oh, that's just dumb.
Like, this was more of a WotC sort of thing. And yeah, I was like, what I was thinking. But I'm working through like a middle manager. And,
I see.
They were like, I was like, I just want to check in with him. And then they're like, no, just do it. Just do it. It's like, just do it. And we'll talk about it. We'll think about it later. And then I remember I messaged Ryan that night because I was so like, oh my gosh, they want to put their style guide, which I never got, above all of like the stuff. And like Ryan was like, yeah, either we change the fingers or we lose the tail. And I was like, that's all you have to say to me. We can't lose the tail. Like, I'll move heaven and earth so that we don't lose the tail. Like, I was like, wow, man. But then like you'll see art done of, oh my gosh, what's Joe Mann's character's name? His red dragonborn. What's his name? Archon? Is it Archon?
Archon, yeah.
Archon the terrible? Archon the
cruel.
The cruel. Archon the cruel.
Archon the negative descriptor.
Yeah, no. Yeah. And then like you'll see like every other piece of official art of Archon has a tail. And like they wanted me to make the feet flat, and I'm like, no, it doesn't make any kind of sense. And so like we added a few things, we took away a few things, and the point is that it was fine. It's just like little things like that where we're putting this idea that we had years ago in a world that was very different years ago above the things that are happening now and the stories that are happening now. And like, man, just give him a blue drow. Like, come on. Just be everyone a blue drow. And like what I was learning, what I've been learning as I've been reading these statements and looking into like some of the history is that like WotC is really like no on change. Like hard, like vote no on change. Like, I'm like, wow. Like, so for me, I was like, I looked at this statement, I was like, oh, this is not a big deal. This is whatever. This is what I've come to expect. And then for some people, like, this is like a big deal. Like, people were reporting on this. I was like, this is news, I guess, I suppose. And it's important. And I was like, any kind of change, little as it is gonna be, it's one step forward, half a step, a quarter step forward. Like, what else? There's, in the reprints last year, Vistani. Yeah, I don't know.
The Vistani one, I think, is like, I'm glad they've recognized this and that they're going to be working with sensitivity readers on both that and new products, which is like, I think, a good step in a good direction.
Can you just hire like a black editor? Like,
or
can you just hire
ones that you have hired,
or keep the ones that you have, or make it more of an effort? And they'll get to that in that statement. Like,
I mean, but also have some sensitivity readers, but also, yes, hiring a more diverse people within your company, definitely.
Yeah, who aren't afraid to speak up, who aren't afraid to point things out, like seeking new, diverse talent to join our staff and our pool of freelance writers and artists. It's just the thing that I've come to expect.
There's this weird, like, and we're seeing it play out nationally with things like statues that are being taken down or beheaded or sent for a swim. But I know Chris Perkins has said previously that he sees his job as kind of protecting and passing on the torch for to the next generation. I
think we can burn some of the past.
Yeah, no, the torch isn't worth passing if it's got all of the shitty stuff.
Exactly,
still
but it's
stuck on
that reverence for all these made up worlds and made up beings and everything that these people have invested so much of their selfhood into.
I'm gonna pass the torch. We're giving you Oriental adventures.
It's this double-edged sword of like that reverence can so easily turn to, oh, but we can't change that. Oh, but it's been that way since Gygax. So I don't know. It comes from a place of like love for and passion for this thing, but it's also can be your biggest Achilles heel if you can't see the problems with it because of that love, right?
Like if I ever made something great in a time and at any time, and as problematic as like Gygax and all of them are, I would like to think, if they're real good people, like I would like to think that anything that I made or anything that someone else made, that only the best parts of it were taken.
Yes.
That, you know what I mean? Like, I'll pass on this torch, but it's only like, okay, we can be reverent towards this. We can be reverent towards Oriental adventures, or we can be reverent to this idea that anybody can play this game, that this is for everybody. And which idea do we want to preserve? That this is for everybody, or just that this is for a certain amount of people, or a certain group of people, or people with certain ideals? Well, you know what I mean? Like, you can say it's a double-edged sword and everything. Right, but we don't have to accept that.
Oh no, absolutely no. My point,
and I know that you know that. I know that you know that.
It was definitely more so that like you can't let yourself become blinded to the fact that there are a lot of issues with this stuff just because you love it so much. Like, absolutely, we need to push through and make those changes. And
yeah, no, it's like I said earlier, because you love this thing, you have the right to criticize it. Yes. It's kind of like, oh my gosh, like whenever you hear someone say, well, if you hate it so much here, why don't you move? It's because
it's also like, oh, if you don't like the color of the walls in your house, you're not just like, I'm gonna burn the house down.
No, it's not even that. It's that I love this place so much that I'm willing to fight for it to be better. You know what I mean? Like, it's more, it's even more so like that. It's like, because I love D&D so much, because I love what this community has done for me, because I love Penny Arcade so much, I'm willing to criticize it. Even if it means I'm blacklisted, even if it means I lose like a bunch of followers, like I don't care. Jesus only had 12. Like, I'm just like so tired of wanting to, I don't want to protect. I'm tired that any of us think that we should protect something that we know is wrong.
Yeah.
It out. Ask somebody else. Hey, don't you think that this is wrong? You know what? Yeah.
Right. And also, like, if you love something to the point where you're going to just idolize it, and maybe you want to be a part of it, or you want to work somewhere so bad that you're just going to let them do whatever because it means that you might get to achieve that goal. Well, like, is that goal really worth achieving if it's not the same as your ideals?
Is it still you who achieved it at the end?
Yeah. Or did you have to become a totally different person than you cared about?
I just think that everybody's weak ass statement is weak compared to like Ben and Jerry's ice cream. Go Ben and Jerry's ice cream.
Be more like Ben and Jerry's.
Be more like Ben and Jerry's. Get arrested at a protest. Oh, those crazy old men.
They've been fighting the fight for a long time.
And then, like, as far as resources go, like the Black AF specials
yes.
that have been coming out, featured on the Dungeons and Dragons Twitch and on the YouTube and elsewhere. Like, people who are rightfully angry and who are like, this is not enough.
Oddly enough, it's on the WWE's YouTube, but there is
nice. Yeah, because one of those ladies is Superstar or something, right?
Actually,
they have Amber Moon?
Ember something. Yeah, Ember Moon.
Yeah, Ember Moon was on the Black AF panel, I believe. But Xavier Woods has a podcast with the rest of the New Day, and they released like the video recording of their podcast, and it just talks about like being a black man in America.
Oh yeah, no, that like the June 1st, right?
Yeah.
Like when everyone was like just like up in arms and like just really out on the streets, and there was curfews and stuff like that. And I had seen that little clip on Twitter, and I shared it. And I was like, this is exactly what we're talking about.
Yes. So if you haven't seen it, I would recommend giving it a listen. It's the three of them from the New Day, but also a person whose name I am very sorry to say I cannot currently think of, but who is a political activist and also sports. What's a sports news person called?
Anchor?
A journalist?
Sports commentator?
Thank you, a journalist.
Like, journalist?
Sports journalist. But like, yeah. A sports commentator. Commentator was the word I wanted. A sports speaker journalist.
No, like my brain is like fried. Like we're halfway through the year, and I'm like, I can't believe that I went to PAX South this year. Like I can't believe that that was the thing. It feels like 10 years ago.
PAX South.
PAX South was like in January.
It was actually
3,000 years ago.
Yeah.
Oh.
3,000 years ago when I turned 30. It was that weekend. So I've been 30 for 3,000 years. Apparently.
I'm 3,000 years young.
So since we mentioned Oriental Adventures, like I realized I didn't know shit really all about it other than the obvious. And I was like, what the hell is actually away from the Sword Coast? Because that's where they have all the things.
It's called the Yellow Sea.
Excuse me. It's also called the Celestial Sea. It's two different seas. But there's a lot to the left and right of the Sword Coast. According to this map, I don't even know how fucking official this thing is, but it's pretty solid from other shit I've seen.
Look how tiny the Sword Coast is.
I have a better map somewhere.
Yeah, I've definitely seen better maps, but this was just the first big one I found. But the setting is the Kara Tour, is where Oriental Adventures takes place, and that's.
I've only ever heard it referred to as Kara Tour.
Yeah, but basically Oriental
adventures that we do not speak about.
Yeah, it had a bunch of the like monk subclasses and ninjas and all the things that we're all thinking about right now when we hear Oriental Adventures. And then it had like a small section for Kara Tour, which apparently kind of existed in Forgotten Realms, also existed in Greyhawk, and also existed in its own world all at the same time because nobody really knew what to do with it or actually ever did anything much with it. But anyway, here's a bunch of unused space that I have no idea how anyone would ever touch without doing a bad job.
Jeez.
Because I think we all know.
The Yellow Sea. Oh, I just have to smile and nod.
Can we just like play some of the saddest, most disappointed violin music right now?
Sure.
What song do we play when we're just disappointed?
Yeah, play your favorite fuck everything music right now for 1 moment.
Yeah, no.
And then you can come back and get to work being a better person.
Right. I guess we could just reiterate, like, yo, like, I'm Asian, I have a little bit of melanin, colorism is a thing, my experience can in no way, like, undo anything else that anyone else has experienced, because some people have had it a little bit better, some people have had it a little bit worse, and Black Lives Matter. They've always mattered, and they're always going to. Like, fucking change the world. These freaking K-pop stans on Twitter, man.
Oh yes, praises to K-pop.
You know, praise them Zoomers, man.
Yes.
Keep up the good work, and
They're fighting the real good fight. Like they're fighting the fight. Like they're fighting the fight in like social, like pure social distance.
Yeah.
Like, oh, bless them.
Plus them. Here's my take. My wrap-up take is listen, try to learn even just a small new thing every day. If you're tired, think about how much more tired you would be if your experience was different in your life. And make sure that all of your causes that you support are intersectional. I don't want to hear none of this shit about feminists not supporting black women, not supporting trans women. Like, you can't,
for sure.
You can't fight for women's rights, but only for white women. That's not productive. So that's my summary.
First and foremost, I want to thank you, Nurse, for coming on, sharing your time and sharing your perspective. You are just the best. You are a light in this community. Thank you.
I've really tried to be. Not that I have any choice, but no, I totally appreciate it. That I even get a chance. Like, and I don't want y'all to have like a podcast that's like BS, like happening in June, like all the other podcasts that are completely BS. Like, you know what I mean? Like, be a better D&D podcast. Like, no, but thank you. I really appreciate it. And I'm always willing to talk about this stuff with anybody because it's kind of important. It's kind of the life we live.
It is, absolutely. And with all that said, we'd also like to thank Vince Webb for our theme song, Never Stand Alone. We'd like to thank Burnham for our social branding. And I'm going to say that we have answered some cues from our collective A's. This
was
Insight
Check.